Well, hello everyone. Welcome to today's Todd Talk. And I am Todd Marshall Hearnsberger. I'm the founder of Leadwell Solutions and also the author to my new book called The Dysfunctional Leader. Today, I just want to take just a few minutes and go over my book to give a 30,000 foot view of what my book is all about. For those of you who have purchased my book, thank you so much for supporting me. And for those of you who may not be aware of my book or may have heard of it and didn't know much about it, I just want to give you this summary today and kind of let you know what the book is about and why I wrote it. So this book was inspired because I have had a few dysfunctional leaders in my life that did a lot of damage, not only to myself but others around them. And I've always been a fighter for what's right. I've always been a fighter for ethical reasonings and also to be integrous in everything that we do. And I have seen a few leaders in my life. Some I've worked for directly. Some I've heard stories from others, and I knew those people and I knew their personality traits. And I've become a student over the last decade or so of trying to understand and analyze what a dysfunctional or a toxic leader is. It's been my focus, and I want to bring education and information to those of you to help you understand what this world is all about, because leadership, we're supposed to be leading people in a way that is healthy, where people want to follow us. They have a desire. They love following us as leaders. But if we become leaders to where we're leaders just by title, but yet people don't want to naturally follow us, then there's an issue there. And as I said earlier in one of my other podcasts, we're not perfect. No leader is perfect. I'm not perfect. We all have had dysfunctional moments. But some of us as leaders live in dysfunction constantly, 24 hours a day. Their leadership skills, their leadership, the things they do in leadership is just not healthy for people that follow them. And so I want to bring light to this subject in this podcast as we move forward and help people understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership. I'm going to shed light on all the dark corners of leadership and help inspire us who are leaders and who want to be leaders and how to be great leaders. So this book was inspired, again, as I said, from personal experiences of working for a few dysfunctional leaders. And I want to disclose here and make a disclaimer that I have worked with some fabulous leaders that I still look up to this day, that I love. I still stay in contact with many of them, but I've had a few that really have done a lot of damage, more damage than good, and I was a recipient of that. My wife, Stephanie, has been a recipient of dysfunctional and toxic leaders before. But I just want to give a brief, quick overview of this book so you kind of understand that if you purchase it, what you'd be getting and what you'd be getting, the content out of it. And so I originally started out by saying, okay, what's the origin, the foundation of dysfunctional leadership? And when I say dysfunctional, I mean leadership that is not healthy. Toxic leadership falls under the dysfunction. Toxic may be more extreme than dysfunction because there are different spectrums. There's a spectrum of how bad a leader can be. Dysfunction on one side can be very minor and minimal with just moments of dysfunction, but then you have the other side that can be toxic leadership, to where it's just at a much more extreme level of unhealthiness. But I went to the origins and tried to find out, where did toxic and dysfunctional leadership started? And I found out just through my studies and being a believer in Jesus, that the foundations began with Lucifer. When he was in heaven, he tried to become God and be like God, and long story short, God kicked him out. And so my first chapter, and I'm going to kind of show you here, these are my titles here, my contents, table of contents. The very first chapter is called The Fall of the Bright Star. referring to Lucifer and what he did to try to overtake God and his leadership, because he was definitely a leader in heaven. He was the main praise and worship leader, as we would call them today. And he tried to become God, and God kicked him out. He is the founder of all of the dysfunctional leadership that we encounter today in our world. So that goes into all that detail. But section 1, the part right underneath chapter 1, is actually talks about the different leadership traits or dysfunctional leadership traits that I've identified. Now, this is not a complete, exhaustive list of dysfunctional leadership styles and traits. I could have added more, and I may go back at some point in the future and add more as I come across them and they are identified to me. But here are the different dysfunctional leaders that I have identified. And the first one is the bully leader. The second one is the clueless leader. The third is the incompetent leader. The micromanager leader. The narcissistic leader. The no common sense leader. The passive leader. And the unethical leader. So, again, I'm just giving you an overview today of this. At some point in my podcast, I'm going to be going to each of these individually in detail to explain it. And my book is intended not to bash leaders. The intention of my book is to identify these dysfunctional traits and how to fix them. And if you are one of these leaders who are dysfunctional, more on the extreme side of dysfunction or even the toxic side of dysfunction, then this book is for you. It helps to identify what these traits are and how to mitigate, how to solve that. And so I'm excited about this book to bring it out to the world, because out of the many voices that are out there that teach and talk on the subject of leadership, there are some that do talk about the toxic side or the unhealthy side of leadership, and I want to add my voice to that. So what got me to write this book is I'm going to kind of tell you some personal experiences without mentioning names or organizations of why I wrote this book and how it came about. So back in my early to mid 20s, I went off to Bible college and I was getting my biblical studies degree in pastoral studies. And it was put on by a very large mega church, very large organization church that was known all across the world. The pastor was very much of a prominent pastor in the Christian world television. So my first year there, I went through college. I volunteered in the food bank, the shelter ministry, and I did all kinds of outreach ministries as a volunteer. And between my first and second year of my Bible college years, I was asked to come on staff full time in the outreach department of this large megachurch. And of course, it was my introduction to full-time ministry, and I was thrilled because I never knew what God wanted me to do as far as full-time ministry. Pastoring was never on my radar at this point. So I got on staff of this at the outreach department of this large mega church, and the pastor, the senior pastor, and even my direct oversight of this department were so toxic in their leadership styles that I'm surprised that I even stuck with being a leader in Christian ministry going forward, because they really did a lot of damage to me. Both of these guys were extreme narcissists. They were bullies. Nothing we did in the department, and I wasn't the only one who worked full-time. I think there was 5 of us full-time in this department. None of us did good enough, worked hard enough. Our efforts never were significant enough that he was happy with. It was constant do better, work harder, and all these things. It was like we couldn't have worked any harder. I mean, we had people in the office that it was our full-time heart and devotion to work and to be an outreach to our community for our local church. And the senior pastor from the platform was always mean, nasty, and ugly, even though he can preach from a phone book. For those of you who remember what phone books are, you can give him anything and he would preach a masterpiece message, was a word merchant times 100, and had a very, very large following all across the world in a very large church locally. And I just thought it was something normal. But I found out over the years that it was not normal. And these leadership traits, these toxic leadership tendencies that they had were just enough to almost take me out of full-time ministry. I confronted my direct leader multiple times, a few times while I was there, and didn't get anywhere with that. He would berate us in staff meetings, and again say that we weren't working hard enough, and nothing was ever good enough. He was never happy about anything we did. Me and another coworker actually walked out on him on 2 different meetings. Couldn't take it. After the second meeting, we walked out. We went straight to HR and said, change us to another ministry department or else we're out of here. Well, they did. They were starting a brand new ministry there, and they asked me to be a part of starting up that ministry and working under another leader in the church, which I loved and did well at that. And it was shortly after that we moved on to other full-time ministry opportunities in the pastoral world. So that is why I wrote this book. Some of you may know who I'm talking about, and I can't stop you from knowing that information, but I just, even today, as of this day, he is still in full-time pastoral ministry at the same church, and can't believe he's made it this long, but his church has taken tremendous hits as far as attendance and giving and all that. We still know friends who work there on staff and get all the information and highlights there. But that's the reason I wrote this book. I want to bring information to the leadership world, especially the Christian community, of how to be healthy leaders. Us Christians, leaders in Christianity, should be setting the example of what healthy leaders should be. And unfortunately, there are a minority, a few in Christian leadership that should not be in leadership. The leaders I've mentioned should not be in leadership. Since I've started researching and studying this subject matter over the past decade or so, I have talked with many other Christian leaders who have worked underneath other Christian leaders that were dysfunctional and toxic in their personality and traits. I've heard many horror stories, and it's just hard to digest that there are leaders in the Christian community that act like this, when in fact these people are bringing and causing more damage than doing good. So this is my heart and passion, and if you are interested in knowing more about my book, you can go to my website, which is ToddMarshallHearnsberger.com. I'm going to put it in the description below the video so that you can copy and paste it and know how to spell that. So find out more about me, my book, what I do for LeadWell Solutions. And so I'm here as a resource for you. That's the reason I'm creating this podcast, is to add my voice to the other great leaders who are trying to share great leadership principles with all leaders, no matter Christian or secular. And I just want to be a part of that world. And I'm excited to move forward with you and share this information. I will be interviewing other great Christian leaders as I build and develop this podcast. So be watching for all of these interviews that I'm going to be having. I already have 2 leaders on the books right now on the calendar that I'll be interviewing here this next coming week, and we'll be putting that live here on this YouTube channel here as soon as possible. So again, thanks for joining me. Thanks for following me. If you will subscribe to this channel and hit the notification button every time a video that will be posted, you'll get notification of it. And so I appreciate your support, and I'm here for you. I'm here. Let's grow together and lead well.